I'll ask a very first question to that CISO. Why are you there? What is your why behind your why? Are you there to serve or are you there to serve yourself? Because your stick mentality is only serving yourself and clearly it's not working. So if you're really there to help the business, then let's flip the narrative and figure out if we were here to serve, if we are here to enable the business, and if you are in your peer's shoe, in this case, let's say CPTO or CTO or chief legal officer or whatever, put yourself in that person's situation and now think about how would you create a win-win.
Welcome to the Candid CISO podcast, where we are illuminating your path to impact. Hi everyone, Steve here. That was our guest, Aysha Khan, the CISO and CIO at Treasure Data located in Mountain View, California. Aysha has over 20 years of experience in information technology and security at Fortune 500 companies. She's passionate about aligning strategy with agile execution to drive business results and customer satisfaction. Aysha has successfully built and led technology, security, compliance, risk, and operations functions from scratch. And she has also turned around disjointed organizations into cohesive and collaborative environments. Get ready to hear about her unexpected journey into cybersecurity and how she's transforming the field with empathy and bold leadership. Aysha will share the surprising twist that led her to become a chief security officer and how she views cybersecurity, not just as a technical challenge, but as a vital business risk. And during the conversation, we're going to discuss her unique leadership style, where humanity and empathy take center stage, and her real-life stories of how this approach has shaped her decisions and projects. Ever wondered how to overcome self-doubt and fully realize your potential? Aysha will reveal personal turning points that helped her break barriers and offer strategies for aspiring leaders to make a more meaningful impact. She'll also talk about her fearless approach to facing tough challenges, sharing how she tackles fear head-on and turns obstacles into opportunities. She's going to talk about the importance of giving back and her vision for a future where diversity and high performance go hand in hand. This is an episode you're not going to want to miss, full of inspiring insights and practical advice from one of the most dynamic CISOs in the business. But before we get started, I'd like to share a few words about our sponsors. Are you spending too much time and money on identity management operations, fintech compliance, security, and complex point integrations? Are you struggling with technical debt, multi-cloud data silos, vendor lock, and a subpar customer experience? Do you need an efficient way to adopt modern digital ID solutions like Know Your Customer, MFA, Identity Proofing Verification, Zero Trust, and Web3? IDRamp's integrated identity platform is here to address your needs. Integrated Identity offers a comprehensive orchestration solution that automates operations, integrations, compliance, security, and digital transformation. It operates above the clouds and across diverse infrastructures, offering seamless support of legacy systems and the latest advancements in ID security and Web3 decentralization. Digital identity should be a strategic business asset, not a security burden that is expensive to maintain and slow to innovate. So contact IDRamp today to learn how integrated identity can help improve your business by visiting them at idramp.com/candidciso. Thank you, Aysha, for joining the Candid CISO podcast.
Thank you for having me. I am excited to be here and sharing my journey and learning together what we can take this conversation to. So thank you.
Before we get started, I like to have an icebreaker question so I and the audience can get to know you a little bit better. And, before looking at your long list of professional achievements, and I try to change this up from guest to guest. So I just came up with this one. If you could have dinner with any three people from history, who would they be and why?
Yeah, you know what, Steve, nobody has ever asked me this question. And when I saw this question the first time, I was like, oh my God, I need to do some self reflection. And honestly speaking, up until this morning, I didn't have a good answer. Look, there are a lot of people who walk this planet Earth and they have contributed in many shape and form and have a lot of respect for all those folks. But I thought what came naturally to me, came straight from my heart, was actually there are people rather than I go historically, there are people now that I want to meet And the reason for meeting is not to get anything out of them. It's just I have such immense respect for who they are as human beings, for their philosophies, the kind of work that they are doing. So the three names that I'm going to give you, they are alive, and my reason for meeting them is going to be just get to know them, collaborate with them, create something beautiful together. And I'll talk about these individuals one by one. The first name comes to my mind is, if I'm pronouncing it right, Hamdi Ulukaya. He's the founder of Chobani Industries. And I follow him on LinkedIn. I have never met him. I see his news time to time, whether it's TED Talk or on a media channel. But such humanity. When I look at this guy, he's a founder, CEO of the company, but his vision with clarity, with the mission that he has, it's very much aligned to who I am as well. So this guide always talks about how he puts people first, and putting people first, bringing the best out of them, leads into everything beautiful from there, you know. So I would love the opportunity of meeting him, talking about what can we do together to increase the collective consciousness. So then the second name comes to my mind is Satya Nadella, who is the CEO of Microsoft. Again, if you remember in our original conversation, I said I'm very much at the intersection of humanity and technology, and I see him in a very same format. I understand what shaped him, how he has become the person that he has become, being at the forefront of technology, how he uses, again, humanity to bring the best out of people. And every product that he puts out there is for the people, built by the people. So, again, another opportunity where I feel like there's so much to learn from that being. I would love the opportunity to sit down and think about how we can collaborate and just do some wonderful things together. And third one is not from a tech world. Well, obviously, the first one was not from the tech world. It's more retail and food industry. The third one is Sadhguru. I don't know if you know him. I am spiritual, and when I look up to Sadhguru, he is a very spiritual person and such no nonsense personality. You know, he comes in, he talks about the mental toughness, he talks about grace, humanity, charity, but most of all, very much to the point. He has made the whole spiritual topic so lighthearted. It's like there's so much that we don't know, but he talks in a way that it's just so relatable. So again, another person that I would love the opportunity to sit down and see what can we do together to increase the collective consciousness of this planet.
Your answers are really illuminating in terms of how you think about leadership. There were no CISOs in your wish list, which I think is interesting. That really shows your sense of balance and your empathy in leadership, which we're going to get to shortly. But before we get to your leadership philosophy, let's talk about your role as a CISO and how you found your path and your journey along that line. You've described this as more of a serendipitous experience. Could you share more about the circumstances that led you into this field and the moment you realized that this was the right fit for you?
Yeah, I'll start off by saying I think serendipity is the right word. Often say security found me rather than me finding security. It all happened organically. So, a little bit about my background. I did my computer science with major in computer communication. And at that time, security was new. So, then I picked my minor and electives as security and business. 20 years later, I am so grateful that I could not pick better subjects because I will talk about this. Security, I often talk about security is not a technology problem, it's a business problem. So, getting into early on and understanding how security and business played a very big role in where I am today. But how it happened, fresh out of college, started working for Bank of Montreal, and grateful to the VP at the time. I don't remember his name now. Bank of Montreal came up with, I think, a brilliant program that I think a lot of companies should do. So, what they had done, they looked at kids with highest GPAs in many different colleges. And I happened to be that one kid, lucky enough to get into Bank of Montreal. And they were doing a rotation program every 6 months. And the idea was if we are bringing all these smart people into our ecosystem, let's make sure we retain them. And often what happens is when new kids come in, they are figuring out who they are, what they like, and then if they don't like, they switch, right? So in my case, I started with system development, so I did that work for almost 6 months, and at 6 point mark, the VP reached out again just to check on how I'm doing, if I'm ready to switch. And around that time, there was the head of security. He was looking for somebody to be hired in his department. And again, luck, I was also looking into reading, getting into that CISSP exam. So I had that book on my shelf. So VP walks in and he's like, "Hey, let's have a conversation. What do you want to do next?" And he looked at that book and he's like, "What are you doing with the CISSP book?" And I said, "Well, I have just started exploring. I'm thinking I'm going to go and take that exam." So he's like, "Are you interested in security?" And I said, "Yes." And around that same time, the other guy walked in and he's like, "Oh, I'm looking for a security person." So again, serendipity, all three of us met at the intersection of VP is looking to retain, the head of security is looking to hire, and I am ready to switch. So that's how the switch happened. But I'll tell you, my first week into my new role, and I knew this is it. And I'll tell you why. What I see, I describe security work as creative detective work. There is never a dull moment. No two projects are the same. Every time I touched a project, even if I knew the foundational principles are the same, there is something new that we have to look at from a different angle. We have to see who the audience is, what industries we are talking about, what factors to consider, what threat factors are going to be there. So, again, never a dull moment. And that's how I knew this is something I enjoy, and I'm going to keep doing it. And here I am 20 years later, still enjoying it.
You've explained a lot, especially the part about high GPA, which I think probably speaks to a higher IQ. And I'll just venture out and say that I think those two things may be leading indicators about a CISO's ability to look beyond the technology and to look at multiple perspectives and to apply both left and right brain, technology
Mhm.
and business, technical and human. Think about those things in the same thought.
Yeah, I think I will just add one thing. I've met a lot of people who have excellent IQ, maybe better than my mine. But one thing that I feel, as leaders, doesn't matter which field, which industry we are in, we need to embrace more is EQ. So I'm going to embrace it. I feel I use my EQ as much as I use my IQ, and that combination brought me to where I am.
I think that's so important. And I think a lot rides on that ability of EQ and
Yeah.
desire, right? And you just put yourself there. I wonder, since you've stepped into this role, you've been in this, in several CISO roles. That's a bit of a criteria to get on this podcast, as you're not a first time CISO. We're looking for wisdom and guidance and insight of experienced CISOs. What has been the most surprising change or development in the field, and how has it impacted your approach to managing security?
Yeah. Thank you for asking this question. I think this is very important because we have to shed some light on it. And I'll tell you from my point of view what shaped my perspective, where I see the changes happening. CISOs thought it was a very technical job. They always made it about a technology problem. And I think even to date, I see many CISOs make that mistake, thinking that this is just a technology problem. I did a panel a few months ago where somebody said CISOs don't have enough power or they are not the real executives. And I disagreed wholeheartedly. And I said, well, empowerment comes from within, not from outside. If anyone thinks that they don't have power, it's the internal job. They just don't feel, nobody's going to come and tell you that you have power, right? So, again, my perspective is, and where the industry has changed, I feel more and more CISOs now are seeing if you are just talking about a technology, you're not going too far. So, let me rephrase it this way: management board, they don't speak the technical language. Your job as a CISO is not to go up to your management and say, "Hey, I have this API problem or I have this vulnerability problem." Your job is to highlight risk in the organization, and that's the business problem. And that risk is tied to our financials, is tied to our trust, is tied to revenue. So when you connect the dots from a technology point of view to what is the impact to the business, that's where the real conversation is. So sorry to say, when CISO says we are not getting budgeting, we are not getting resources, we are not getting the respect that we deserve, I often say maybe you still need to do some work on your own to see how are you articulating. Because I've been in this position for now here only in treasure data for 5 years. Never ever I went up to my management and I said something that this is what's happening. They would have said, no, you're not going to get money. And I'll tell you where all the other departments are getting cuts, security is a top notch priority. So it's a matter of how we are articulating and what is the impact to the business. So tie that.
If I'm connecting the dots, so high GPA, high IQ, high EQ, broad perspective improves your ability to communicate at a
Mhm.
level that is appropriate in a business context and within your team and among technologists as well.
Absolutely. It's a big picture view. What is it that you are here to deliver? Why? How? Think about all those things. So level up the conversation. Consider yourself that you are adding value in that capacity. People will start taking you seriously.
I hope they do. And my one of my goals for this podcast is to help raise that consciousness and improve the skills and abilities for all CISOs, especially ones that aspire to get into this role, that they need to develop in multiple dimensions. Not just get the CISSP exam and pass that, but on the most recent recording, having a conversation with the guest for the candidate CISO about the value of MBAs to
Mhm.
CISOs.
Mhm.
Versus, it's not that you're soft and it's not that you are trying to find a unique angle. All CISOs need to be able to handle the heat in the kitchen, and if there's a breach, not
Yeah,
just run around like Stuart Little, but be able to communicate.
absolutely. And this notion that we have to be nice, I consider myself, well, I often say, well, the way I lead is tough love. I am very direct. I don't know, nice. I, I'm struggling with this word nice. I build very trusted relationships with my peers, with management up and down. Um, I'm courteous, respectful, but the big thing that I think I do right is driving accountability. I don't use my position as someone who is on the chopping block. One of the program that I've created is the risk management committee, which simply means my job is to highlight risk, but I am not going to be able to solve all those risks if I don't have other management understanding their part in solving those problems. So part of the risk committee is my CPTO, CTO, CMO, CLO. We all are on that forum. I highlight risk and I say, okay, this is in your organization, this is in your organization. We are not going to make unilateral decisions. There is no 100% security, but we are going to talk about these things. And then we have four options. We all have to agree, we have to accept, reject, transfer, or avoid. So with this conversation now, I'm driving accountability. And often what happens is not only giving them visibility, but sometimes, for example, if my CTO comes and says, I don't have resources, I'm an advocate for him. Then I go up to my boss and say, listen, we have this problem. It's in his organization, but he's running into resource allocation problem. How do we help him? And I think this is where, good, better, ugly, I communicate up and down with my peers. So I would say one of the things that helps me getting things done is building trusted relationship and is speaking so honestly.
I really appreciate the balance that you strike between accountability and directness, but you lead almost every conversation we've had together with belief in humanity and empathy and your leadership values. So you've placed a really strong emphasis on this. Can you share, maybe digging a little bit deeper, a specific example of how this approach has influenced a significant decision in your role?
Yeah, there are quite a few examples. I'll talk about good examples and I'll give you some bad examples as well. Bad is in tough examples and how, because leading at empathy and compassion has helped me still create a win win. First thing I will think about is, I often hear the resistance between security and engineering departments. Engineering is incentivized by shipping products, and security is incentivized by keeping things secure. But the reality is the two are not at odds. We have to work in parallel. So, because of building trusted relationships, leading with empathy, understanding my CPTO and CTO's pain points, how they are incentivized, I understand what's their motives. And then I speak about my incentive programs, like how am I being measured? It's not only my personal accomplishment as a company. So, what is the end goal? The end goal is we want to produce a product that customers love and it has their utmost trust and security, right? So, from that point of view, my conversations with my CPTO is very simple. Whatever product we are creating, let's make sure we shift security to the left as early as possible. So we have first, we are aligned. Second, we trust each other. Third, we know that it's the right thing for the business. It's not me versus him, it's what's right for the business. So we have created processes where we bake security into our software development lifecycle early on. We enable, empower our engineers. And I often say there is no stick. Security needs to be acting as a function of enablement. So we run in parallel to innovation. So my engineering department has a full pass on creating whatever they want to create, however they want to innovate. Security will be running in parallel, and they just have to have this honest communication on both sides saying, this is what we are doing, this is how we are doing, what's your take on it? So that's a powerful example where we have created such a beautiful, harmonious relationship between the two departments where we work in collaboration and there is no this versus that, me versus you, and we talk about resources allocation openly. The tough example that I would talk about where again leadership, right leadership matters. There have been times where we hire people, but somehow they don't turn out to be the right fit. It doesn't mean they are bad people. I recently had an example where I had somebody on my team who's a compassionate human being, loved by his team members, but someone who was not the right fit for the job because of his passion, skill set. I had a conversation and I believe in pinches, not punches, which simply means I don't wait for the entire performance evaluation to come back and give you feedback. Every time I see an opportunity for you to improve, then I will come and tell you, hey, here's how we can do things differently. And I could see that how he was struggling to build trusted relationships, whether he wanted or not. And I'll talk about something here. Somebody who's compassionate, kind, loved by his team member could still lack in emotional intelligence. And that emotional intelligence is what was feeding into leading with empathy. He had empathy for his team, but he didn't have empathy for his stakeholders. So there was a lot of resistance. So I had a conversation with him, gave him feedback a couple of times. Then I showed him actually, because I don't call myself a manager. Leaders are not someone who are micromanaging people. So I gave him feedback and I said, here is a plan. Here's what I would do if I were in your situation. And then things were still not changing. And at that point, I decided if I don't give him this again feedback and what I'm going to do next, I'm doing disservice to him as well as to the company. So I had an honest conversation with him saying that you are a great human being, but for this role, I need a strong leadership. Somebody who is, you think that you're protecting your team, but by not showing up in a capacity you need to show up, you're not protecting your team. You're putting them in a situation where other people will stop trusting your team. And then I told him that this is not going to work out. And I have this is not personal. I see the qualities in him. I highlighted those qualities. I talked about his strengths. And then I connected him to other people where I think he will thrive. So it was a very graceful transition from here to something that he can excel in. So often I feel people put up with the word I'm thinking of a graceful word, but sometimes mediocre talent, thinking we can just keep on going like that. And I often feel that's so wrong. You're doing wrong at so many level. You're depriving people of their potential.
I love the pinches, not punches example. Do you see your strategies that are leaning maybe more towards carrots versus sticks, right? Do you like to like incentivize more with carrots, or are there times when you have to pull out the stick and make corrective actions that aren't going to be liked very well by your stakeholders? How
Yeah.
do you think about that carrot versus the stick, and what's the dominant
Yeah.
strategy that works well either for you and in certain environments, maybe in high risk environments like financial services?
Yeah, I'll tell you first. I'm not stressed out. I'm not, I don't know how silly it is, but I don't feel stressed at all. I believe there is no 100% security. I'm always taking calculated risk. I am doing everything in my power, and everything that I do, I think through everything. So, as I said, I'm very conscious and thoughtful. So, if I have done my best, then there is no reason to be stressed out because I've done my best. Even if I am put in a situation where I have to justify, I have my math behind my answer. Like, how did I get to it, and why did I do what I did? So I don't feel stressed out.
And you hit on a very interesting point too that maybe helps to answer the question is, you show up with your math behind you. So that reflects, in confidence in how you carry yourself and how you speak. And I'm, going through, a similar situation where sometimes if I'm just tired or getting close to burnout, that I start cutting corners and I don't do all of the math that I should be doing, which will translate into a poor performance the next day. And it's
Yeah.
just, it can have a domino effect. So
Show compassion to yourself. We all are human beings in a human experience. There are going to be times where we may not show up as our fully because there's a lot going on in our lives. So it's not like I'm 100% of the time. Sometimes I'm 80, sometimes I'm 90 as well. But if I have to make tough decisions and I know that I'm operating at my 80%, I'm not making a decision at 80%. I know that today is not my best day. So I'm still doing my math, giving myself time. And if somebody's pushing me to make a decision, I'm like, no, I don't have enough data for me to make a decision. So I'm very disciplined about it. And second, I keep showing compassion to myself. Not today. Again, sense of urgency is important. If there is something that I need to um, do quickly, then I will clean up my calendar from all the other shenanigans or distractions that I don't need to be entertaining so that I can get to it. So, again, discipline, compassion plays a very big role. Now, coming back to stick versus carrot question, my approach is very much of a carrot. I never have seen in my life stick ever works. It never works. Why? Look at our human nature. If you tell somebody to do something just because out of fear, or like against their will, they're going to do it, but they are going to do a half-baked job, and you don't want that. You want people to be invested in it, incentivized, right? So my strategy is very simple. I often say that yes, in the security world, there is a stick versus carrot conversation or philosophy, whatever you want to call it. And I have made it very clear that if I need to use a stick, I will. But I don't think we ever need to get there because communication can solve all problems. Articulation can solve all problems. And in fact, I will add something here. More than communication, obviously, communication is the key, but more than communication is the comprehension that matters, right? So I have never called me lucky, and I often say, actually, I have made myself lucky. That's another conversation. Um, because I'm so logical and showing up fully in all conversations, it's never about forcing somebody to do something because I am going in with saying, here is the risk, here is the articulation, here is the impact to the business. I often feel like I leave people with so much data that the data is right on their face and they can go against it.
do you know who has access to your data and how it's being used? Are you facing challenges with securing data across your multi-cloud environments? Well, I want to introduce you to my friends over at TrustLogix. Securing data in use has become a formidable challenge in today's complex IT landscape, where data is scattered across the cloud with complex dependencies between data and security teams. That's where TrustLogix steps in with its cloud-native data security platform. The TrustLogix solution was designed to tackle the intricacies of multi-cloud data security. It centralizes security observability and simplifies the implementation of fine-grained access controls across diverse platforms like Snowflake, Redshift, Databricks, and many others. This means you can secure your data across all clouds without the headaches of traditional methods. So don't let the complexity of multi-cloud security overwhelm you and your teams. You can learn more at trustlogix.io, that is trustlogix with an X.io/candid CISO, to learn how TrustLogix can streamline your data security and give you peace of mind. Secure your data, empower your teams, and lead your organization confidently into the future with TrustLogix. So shifting into a question of how, why do all this? Why go through all the trouble? Why not just crack the whip every single day and get people aligned? Well, as a CISO, I think you have aspirations to really chart a path to impact for the business and for your role, and to have an organization that's more effective than dysfunctional. And during our prep, you made a really great comment about getting out of your own way to fully realize your potential, and you encourage professionals. I've been encouraged by that too. And I feel like I'm only scratching the surface on how to get out of my own way. So I want to hear from you and ask you the question about sharing a personal experience or a turning point that getting out of your own way helped you overcome barriers. And how has it shaped your approach to mentorship in your role and in cybersecurity in general?
I'll tell you first. Well, I have been on my journey, a journey of self-reflection and inward, and I often use the word. There is no other way to go upward but inward. So I often say inward to upward. So first you go in, work on yourself, and then you go upward. You talked to me about what are some of the examples. I can share so many, but again, being vulnerable, I'll tell you where the very first thing that comes to my mind is almost like I know I'm very much aware that I have an accent. And almost, I think 7 years ago, I was talking to a colleague of mine, and she said that, hey, you have really great stories. You should share your journey more. And the first thing I told her is that, yeah, I would love to, but I feel embarrassed of my accent. And she's like, what accent? I said, I know that I have accent. And she's like, get out of yourself.
I love that. I love that response. That's awesome.
Yeah, and that was the first time I realized. And honestly, I had a very honest conversation with her. I said, what do you hear when I speak? She said, what I hear is not only what I hear, what I see is somebody who's so clear in her head, so inspiring, and can help us become clear in our lives. So you are not speaking up in public forums because you are afraid of your accent, not afraid of, ashamed of your accent. And I said, because I have made aware of my accent so many times, so I felt like maybe it's a negative thing. The reality is, look, so then she's like, okay, tell me a little bit more about yourself. So my journey is I was born in Karachi, Pakistan, to parents. My dad was the sole provider. My mom was a housewife. There are many things that have shaped me. But yes, here I'm talking about my accent, but not a lot of people know that I speak six different languages.
Whoa, did you say 6?
Yes, I do. So you see how I was sitting there thinking I have accent, but I have accent because I speak six different languages. English was not my first language. Forget about English. The national tongue was not my first language. So I speak my father's language. I speak my mom's language. I speak the regional language. I speak the uh, other outside of the country languages. So the languages are English, Urdu, Hindi, Pashto, Punjabi, and I can read Arabic and Farsi, and I can actually understand Farsi as well. And then there is a regional language, Sindhi. So there are like so many languages. I'm a hodgepodge of everything. So that's the classic example. Somewhere I was thinking it's my weakness, but actually it's not a weakness. It happened because organically I was learning many different languages. So here's the product of it.
What were the circumstances for learning multiple languages? What, like, did you love language, or was it just like, did you move around a lot, or were you encouraged to learn a lot of languages?
I would say it's cultural. Average Pakistani Indian, so that's one
Hmm.
subcontinent. Generally speaking, know three, four languages. In my case, my parents are from different regions. They came together, so they had their own languages. I was born in a so Pakistan has the national language, which is Urdu. Then my mom and dad are from different regions, so they have their own languages. Three. Then we were growing up in a state which had its own language, and then religious language, which was Arabic. And then because all four or five languages like Urdu, Arabic, Hindi, um, Pashto were so similar, like organically I understood Farsi, uh, Sindhis, because the dialect is very similar. So, long story short, on an average, Pakistani Indians speak three to four languages because it's just common. But in my case, there were two, three extra because my parents were not from the same region.
So if I'm connecting the dots, I'm just thinking about the the GPA, the IQ, the EQ, and now multiple languages. You're just demonstrating that from your culture and upbringing you have already. Like, you didn't anchor on a single language; you were pushed out of your mental comfort zone, and this results in cognitive flexibility to move around in something that's as necessary almost as air, which is language. And you get
Yeah.
comfortable context shifting, or switching
Oh,
different languages. So I think I understand that about you. What if we were to look at um, strategies or recommendations for organizations or aspiring cybersecurity leaders who don't know six languages? Let's say they only know English, or maybe English and Spanish, or English in one language. I don't know what that
mhm.
is. To develop that cognitive flexibility or organizational agility to be able to effortlessly move throughout the organization in ways that are
Yeah.
important.
Yeah, I think there are a couple of things that I would say, and not only for leaders, for all of humanity. I feel these things are the biggest problems that, again, getting in their own way. If we understand these three, four things, we will start unblocking ourselves. The first thing that comes to my mind is grit. Grit to me is perseverance, consistency. There is a beautiful line that says, I might butcher it right now. Consistency is the only key. I'm forgetting the phrase, but I'm just going to talk about what I feel. I often say change is the only constant. And I don't know why people are afraid of change. If you think about it, you're always making a decision, this change or that change. Pick your heart, right? Pick your heart. So if change is the only constant, what they need to understand is adaptability, perseverance, being consistent. And that comes from this quality of that having grittiness. There's a beautiful TED talk, I think it's also rated number one by Angela Lowe. That's the number one quality if you want to thrive in your life. Have this mental toughness. Second thing, emotional regulation. I can't tell you how many times I have seen amazing leaders, technically solid, but lack the emotional regulation. What is emotional regulation, if I can further break it down, is not being able to take constructive feedback, not being able to build trusted relationships, not being able to uh, invest in others. It's always about like me, 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 me. There is a beautiful saying, if you want to go far, no, if you want to go some, I'm forgetting it, but
If you want to go
if you
fast, go alone. If you want to
fast,
go far, go
exactly.
with a team.
Thank you. Thank you. Absolutely. Yes. And that's absolutely true. And I'll tell you, Steve, I think if I can tell you how did I get here, of course, all those things, I don't want to take away the credit from my own passion and smart work. See, I didn't say hard work, smart work. That's granted. But the biggest factor of me getting where I am today is me investing in others. I am a big proponent and a believer. The more I give, the more comes back.
In just a minute, we're going to talk about your philanthropy and giving back. I know that's one of your favorite topics. There's, the impact and realizing potential, though I don't think we've quite exhausted it. An exchange on Twitter I was just having with a colleague around, the, chat 4.0 just came out, and you can do video and audio, and everyone thinks it's the greatest thing, right? And it comes back to, I'm going through this MBA program, and I reflected in the response that, hey, I've used all the tools, and Chat GPT is frequently wrong when it comes to doing anything beyond basic addition and subtraction. When you're trying to do calculus and solve really tough scenario based problems, it can't be reliable all the time. Which brings me to say that we still need teachers and leaders and parents to teach students these
Mhm.
things that you're just talking about, the grit, the consistency. Like, Chat GPT isn't going to solve all of our problems. It won't take a lazy person and make them productive. It takes a productive person and makes them more productive. So to get across that
Exactly.
gap, right, of you need the teachers, the leaders, and the parents to inspire
Yeah.
their kids or their teams to excellence. And so my last question here about path to impact and realizing potential is, could you share your personal values or experiences that continue to drive your commitment to transparency and candid leadership in a challenging industry? I mean, direct, right? As you like to be. You're a minority in your role in Silicon Valley. It's almost an anomaly that you're in the position that you're in, but you've been able to be successful. I'd love to hear from you about this, right? How do you stay committed? How do you encourage others to do the same?
Yeah. I'll tell you, I have two daughters, 7 and 10. When I think about the world, I am keep thinking, where is the kind of world I want to leave behind for them? That's my biggest motivator. But I am not the kind of mom who thinks, oh, my daughters are my property or my investment, and I have to do everything, only for them. No, what I'm saying is, I am raising two leaders for the planet. How do I raise them so that when I leave, the legacy continues? So that's where my why starts. And the number one thing I keep telling my daughters, I don't care what you do, how you do, as long as you do it passionately and you fully give your whole self, I will fully support you. So the number one thing that I'm trying to instill in them is the growth mindset, which is curiosity. Keep staying curious. You want to try a new thing? Go do it. I'm not letting them um, have this thing that they can be afraid of things. No, there's no need. And I'll tell you, I have a beautiful relationship with fear. I often say fear is my best friend. It's nothing but preparing me for something that I'm uncomfortable with. It's giving me an indicator that something is coming and you need to get ready for it. So I keep telling my daughters the same thing. You need to be curious about everything around you, about you, and how are you going to be contributing to the society. And then it extends from everything that I do. So IT security is something that I have learned. It's a worldly skill. But my spiritual skill or gift, what I would say is, every time I talk to any being, any human being, it's helping them see their own potential, their own greatness. Why are you playing small? You haven't come here. First of all, none of us are an accident here. You're not. If we are not an accident, why are we shrinking ourselves? Why are we living small? What's in it for us? Whichever school of thought, whichever religion you believe in, I believe in the higher consciousness. Higher consciousness did not create me to live small. If I have come from a source and source is intelligent, I am intelligent. I'm a creator and I'm going to keep creating with the highest intention. And that is my goal and mission, to touch billion lives. And when I say touch billion lives, meaning awaken billion people to their greatness.
Wow. So you've talked about how you talk to your daughters about this issue. If you were to imagine, and you've already talked about how you coached a direct report through a difficult situation to get them to a place to thrive. For a moment, imagine another CISO appear within the industry who's struggling with some of these issues and maybe who's used to using the stick more than the carrot and doesn't have the emotional regulation, is maybe operating more on an OS of entitlement, grit,
Service.
and growth mindset and curiosity. How would you coach your peers who are struggling with this to achieve to get out of their own way and to achieve a more effortless, sustainable level of success and productivity?
Right. I'll ask a very first question to that CISO. Why are you there? What is your why behind your why? Are you there to serve or are you there to serve yourself? Because your stick mentality is only serving yourself and clearly it's not working. So if you're really there to help the business, then let's flip the narrative and figure out, if we were here to serve, if we are here to enable the business, and if you are in your peer shoe, in this case, let's say CPTO or CTO or chief legal officer or whatever, put yourself in that person's situation and now think about how would you create a win-win. Often, as I said, often people are just thinking about The technical problem, I'm not getting resources, they are not hearing because you're not speaking the business language. You are not articulating what's in it for them. What's in it? When I say in it for them, first for that department, how are you holding them accountable? And then second, what's in it for business? And if this doesn't get right, who is getting going to be impacted? So in my case, for example, if we have vulnerabilities and if we have um, any risk in the organization, I am responsible for assuring our customers, right? I am the face of the company when it comes to trust. And if I go and I tell my customer, hey, I have this problem, but this problem, like, I'm not a scapegoat. I'm not just going there and telling him there is a problem. I can't do anything about it. But then I am the driver within the company to come and solve that problem. So that's the conversation. I tell my CPTO, if there's a problem and you are not going to help me, we are not going to close this deal. You are not here just to be a CPTO and ship the product, and I'm not here just to be a CISO and keep creating or adding more compliance. What is the end goal? The end goal is to increase revenue, increase more trust. And if we are not aligned, then what are we doing here? Let's just pack our bags and go home.
Revenue and trust, right?
Exactly.
And I think those two go hand in hand. I am so grateful to you because if it weren't for your belief in giving back and philanthropy, you've expressed a strong commitment to giving back and supporting community initiatives. What areas that we haven't discussed are important to you? Could you discuss how philanthropy and generosity and giving back in more detail enables or affects your role as a CISO?
Yeah, I'll tell you one thing. I think I often say it's a disguised role for me. I am the face of security and IT in my organization, but it's not what I am there for. I mean, obviously, I'm getting those things done. But the reason I want to highlight this, no matter what role you're in, whether you're any CXO role, or even if you are not in that position of leadership, any role has value. But what I'm trying to say is, forget about the thing that you are doing, focus more on how you are doing. For me, it's personally what gets me going every morning is the people that I'm responsible for leading. Work is going to be amazing no matter what because they know how I operate and they know what is the expectation. Direction is there, strategy is there, resources are there, so they are going to deliver. My goal every morning is the people that I have in my purview, how can I bring the best out of them? I am shaping the leaders for tomorrow. If I can help them become emotionally regulated, develop, cultivate a skill of grittiness, the growth mindset, um, help them see the potential in them, no matter where these individuals will land in the future, they are going to create amazing societies, amazing cultures, amazing companies. They are going to be amazing fathers, wives, daughters, son, who knows what. So that's what gets me going. And I want everyone to think from that perspective. Yes, what we do matters. How we do is the most important thing. We are here to learn, grow, evolve together.
If you're not emotionally regulated, you fear at times you might not even get the job. But the reality is that there are a lot of folks who, we're all human, right? And we are not all perfect stoics. Work and life commingle and happen. I really like the comment about you're not here to play small, and that directly translates into how you show up, right? And your ambition to have an impact of helping a billion people on this planet during your time here. I want to hear from you as we close and share your vision for the future of cybersecurity, particularly how you see the integration of this very hot, potentially political topic of diversity, inclusion, and high performance evolving. What steps do you think are necessary to get you and your organization and our industry closer to this vision?
Yeah, first I'll say I believe in the three P's, which is people, passion, and performance. Which is if we bring the right people who are passionate about what they do, we don't have to manage their performance. And then I like Steve Jobs' quote, which said, "You can hire smart people and then tell them what to do," which totally makes sense and translates or the summary of this three P's. But then where I see the future is heading, future is bright, it's beautiful. I think AI is here to embrace. I often say technology is here to serve humanity, not the other way around. From a cybersecurity future point of view, we have come a long way. 20 years ago, I remember first time when I started working for Bank of Montreal and the online banking was coming, people were like, "Oh, I will never bank online. I don't trust this and that." And look, where are we today? We are shopping online. We're doing everything online. Where I would hope things get better, this disconnect between good guys versus bad guys. And in fact, in some ways, I feel bad guys keep us on our toes.
Hmm.
They help us innovate continuously. But I would love to see that gap shrinking. It's not one side or the other, it's the two sides are helping us innovate better and better. That's where I hope. And again, if again, if we all are conscious, then I hope the bad guys will do the right thing too.
I'm glad you threw in AI there too, because we can't have a podcast episode without talking about AI. But I think you put in its proper context, right, about it being a tool and its ability to elevate and help
Yeah.
humanity versus taking over humanity, and we should all run. And I think that really stems from your relationship to fear and how you're such good friends with fear.
I'll tell you, look, in 90s, 2000, 2010, there was always something new. When I remember there were computers, the first time computers come, people were like, oh, our jobs will be gone. Now, going back to the point that you made earlier, if you are productive, you know how to use technology, it amplifies your work. It doesn't take it away from you. But people who don't learn, they will be left behind. So again, I'm very bullish on AI. It's going to do great things. We just have to get ready. And as I said, cybersecurity future is bright. We just have to awaken more people to their greatness, and there is no end to innovation.
Again, Aisha, I'm so grateful. Thank you so much for taking the time to share your experiences and your success and your views on leadership and your role as a CISO. Really inspiring to me. And, again, thank you for sharing all of this.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
The Candid CISO podcast is a production of Nonconformist Innovation Media. If you enjoyed this episode, would you please consider sharing it with a colleague or maybe subscribing wherever you listen to podcasts? You can read show notes or find other episodes at candidciso.com. You can join our community at connect.nonconformistinnovation.com. Sign in and look for the Candid CISO group. It's free to join. Thanks and a shout out to Brad Parsons of Train Sound Studio for audio engineering and mastering of this podcast. And thanks to you, our listening audience, for the encouragement, feedback, and your participation. It means a lot to me.